Delighted on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds to be talking with prolific author Ellery Adams. We're talking about a book on this episode, Invasive Species. So glad to be talking with you, Ellery. Thank you for joining.
It's so great to be here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, you are a prolific author of mysteries, and I know we're talking genre work on this episode. By means of an origins question, what led you to the written word?
Well, I wish I had some inspirational story about I read something and then I decided to want to be a writer or this, and that, but it was kind of more capitalistic than that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So, I think this is in the late 70s. I'm dating myself here, but that's fine. And I'm on the back of the school bus and I'm hawking stories for quarters, because I did want to buy this really nice typewriter, and my allowance was not going to cover it. It would take me like 3 years. So I started writing and illustrating these stories featuring people in my class. And if they would end up with the crush they wanted, or they'd beat up the bully that they hated, or they'd get the pony they wanted. And, I'd give them a little teaser. I'd be like, look, I wrote this story about you. Here's 2 pages, and then close it and be like, but it's going to cost you a quarter. So I'm like this book pusher on the playground under the slide that, psst, come here, Jason. I wrote something about you.
That is amazing. I love that story. Love that.
And it
Yeah.
just it
So
went from there. And I was very disappointed as I got older that the things that I wrote didn't earn me any money. That lasted for a long time.
yeah, yeah, that you were crafting real life fan fiction for the people around you.
Right. And I did learn, I guess I was in grad school when I figured out that boy, poetry really doesn't pay. That was
Yeah.
at the point where I thought for 5 minutes that I should be a poet.
Yes, yes. So now you've found your way into the world of mystery, and I know you're exploring invasive species. It's right there over your shoulder.
Yep.
Uh, what inspired this story? And I'll mention that it has something to do with the monstrous inside us. So
Yeah,
curious about the
I'll show the
inspiration
book
there.
cover.
Yeah, that's a lovely cover.
So, yeah, it's a very pink and green 80s colors. Strangely enough, for a monster story, this is very autobiographical. It's a strange thing to say, but I basically lived on the street where the book is set. It is Long Island, New York, which is where I grew up. On
Mhm.
the water, we were really surrounded by water. We had harbors and bays and streams and marshes, and the water was really a huge part of our life. And we were kind of out on a spit of land. So it was fairly isolated. There were a couple of streets on this spit of land, and everybody knew everybody on the street. Everybody was in everybody's business. This is not a high-tech time. This is a very low-tech time. And this is a time where parents are saying, get outside until it's dark. And we did. Um, and our parents were outside a lot. They were gardening and doing yard work and cleaning the gutters and putting up Christmas lights and chatting at the mailbox. So everybody knew what was going on in everybody else's life. But there was one woman on our street, and her name was Mrs. Smith, who did not come outside, and her yard didn't look like everybody else's yard. And here's the greatest sin of all: at Halloween, she turned the lights off.
Wow. Uh,
I mean, no pumpkins. She didn't leave any candy out. This was not cool. So, in typical small neighborhood fashion, when you don't know anything about a person, you make up stories about them. And
mhm.
so, from the kid's point of view, she was kind of like a witch figure or a crazy woman. We'd never seen her. I lived there for 14 years and I never saw her, not once. I never saw her come out of her house. I couldn't tell you now what she looked like. I don't know. So she really stayed with me as somebody who could really be an interesting character. And I wanted to make her somebody who was a threat to these kind of complacent people in the rest of the neighborhood, whose biggest concern was really, is my house magazine worthy? Or are my vegetables planted in a nice row? Or is my child, going to make the soccer team and going to be going to college when they grow up. Not that those things are inconsequential, but it's set in 1982 where things are dramatically changing for women. And what I mean by that is that if you look back at magazine campaigns, especially magazines geared toward women, Cosmo, Vogue, these kinds of things, the
Mhm.
slogan that you see over and over again, and I'm trying to dig out this other picture, is the idea of having it all. You can have it all. And this was also a time of very high inflation and when people really needed two incomes to thrive or even survive. This was no longer a time where you could have one breadwinner and the other person stay home and watch the kids, which was usually the woman. Things were just too expensive. Gas, well, kind of like it is now, was through the roof.
Yeah.
Um, and so women were going into the workplace and they were getting jobs they couldn't get before, which was very exciting. The less exciting part was that they weren't getting paid as much as the men, and they were expected to still handle everything at home. So if we look at this ad, this is a perfume ad by then, back then. And here's this
Mhm.
woman, she's so happy shopping and she's so happy raising her kids and she's so happy at work and she's so happy working out. And on top of all that, those happy personalities, she also has to make this beautiful home and home cooked meals and keep her partner happy in bed, according to Cosmo. She doesn't matter, it's only the partner that matters. And I really started thinking about the conflict that would create in each house that was on my street for these
Mhm.
women. And that if you're in an office with one other woman and she's your main competition because only one of you is going to get promoted or climb up this ladder or get a raise, that could really turn women against women. So that was kind of how I was exploring like the monsters of humans in 1982, and is it really their fault or are they responding to societal pressures? And then I throw in Mrs. Smith, who is not even human.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating stuff. And I'm curious about the creative process. It looks like there was a fair amount of research digging into that time period, revisiting some of your early years as well. So, what was that like?
Well, I can tell you that my memory is not very good. I mean, there were things like, when you grow up listening to the same radio station, I would think that the call letters for that radio station would have stuck. And I just could not remember. I could see myself tuning in on the dial. I could see the numbers. And then I would go to the internet and try to find, it because it doesn't exist anymore. So lots about the research made me feel really old. So many things are gone. But it was also really, really nostalgic and fun to remember kind of what toys we were playing with, what we were watching on TV. In many ways, Invasive Species is an homage to monster movies. Old, campy, not really scary monster movies that were fun. There could be some parts where you'd be like, "Oh, I'm a little anxious now," but you never really felt like you had to hide. I was a big fan of those movies. I loved
Mhm.
Godzilla. I loved Creature from the Black Lagoon. All of those. My parents were cool with us watching those. They felt like they were folklore and um, fun stories that it was okay for kids to watch. And that really started my love of monsters and creatures, and it's really never ended. And I wanted this book to kind of give the same vibes as like 1980s. You're sitting there in your pajamas, eating your cereal in front of the TV, and you're going to watch this creature feature. So with maybe some Jiffy Pop if you're lucky.
I love those vibes and love the nostalgia of it. And I also love when authors challenge themselves, take on new genres, take on different worlds. So I know that you've been a writer of mystery and mystery series. So what was it like to kind of step into this world and recapture this time period and then infuse it with some of this love of the supernatural and the monstrous?
I have to tell you, I had a ball with this because there were no rules. Mystery novels are loaded with rules, and rightly so. I mean, we can't just have murder victims and have people
Hmm.
investigate and just go willy-nilly. And, there has to be some science, there has to be some motive. The reader has to get to the end and be able to go to page one and say, I see the clue, I see the clue, I see the clue. Like that's my job. If I don't do that, if they can't check on me, if I fail that check, then I failed them as a mystery writer. And then you look at subgenres of mysteries, and we all have rules in our subgenres. And I've been kind of feeling a little boxed in
Hmm.
by these
Hmm.
subgenre rules. Like I'm like, I just want to write a story without worrying about whether it fits in a mold. And I
Right.
understand we need molds because you have to place things in a bookstore. I get that. I worked at a Barnes and Noble for a year, best job ever. Um, so I understand that, but also I was getting to a point where I'm like, I really want to see if I can turn to the side and have no rules and just write some weird book, which is this blend of all these different genres, and see if anybody wants to buy it or if anybody wants to if anyone wants to publish it and if anyone wants to buy it, because I love genre blends. Like I love
Hmm.
the new myth retellings and I love the mashups where there's a little bit of fantasy or there's a little bit of supernatural in a thriller or there's a little bit of
Hmm.
thriller in a fantasy. I think and I feel like they're very contemporary and very modern. And I feel like when done well, they're like my favorite thing because they're combining all of these elements of storytelling that I love. Some people are not into it. I totally understand that they want to see the tropes, the rules, the things that they're expecting out of their genre, and they don't want crossovers. But I like mashups in music too, so it doesn't surprise me that I like mashups in fiction.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Some of those are my favorite stories as well. And I know that mysteries also have their devotion. So are you planning to dabble back and forth? Are you planning to continue experimenting and
That
visiting
is my
the
hope. Like,
genre?
ideally, I would like to write a mystery one year and then whatever this is, speculative fiction, cozy horror, weird girl lit. I don't even know what to call it. That's the crazy part. People are like, describe your book. I'm like, That's ideal. Honestly, I'm definitely going to continue with my mystery series. I'm very fond of those characters and I'm really not ready to say goodbye to them yet. So, guys, don't panic. I'm not throwing in the towel there. But it's also extremely challenging to write two books in one year and also promote them and then do book tours for each of them. It's hard. So, I don't know. Like I want to keep going, but I have to see if people like HarperCollins are going to want me to write more in this genre. So, and I think they'll decide based on how well this book does. I have written a second book for them and I recently turned it in. So we'll begin the editorial process with them, but I just had a two-book contract, so I hope so, but I don't know.
May it be so. May it be so.
Thank you.
Uh, Absolutely. As a hat tip to your work in the mystery genre, anything that you'd like to say, maybe a tip, a rule for an effective mystery? What have you found to be true in that space before we turn back to invasive species?
Um, I think that for a really, really killer mystery to evolve, it needs to have a villain whose motivation we can understand as the
Mm-hmm.
reader. I am becoming more and more attracted to villains where I have a little bit of sympathy for them. And that sounds weird because they're doing terrible things, but I want to see humanity in my villains because
Oh,
then, you get to this crux in the story and you're like, don't do it, don't do it. And they do. and it's bad and you're upset with them, but also you've been watching their journey or you've heard about their past and what has kind of bent and twisted them. And sometimes they're also victims themselves. And it complicates things. And I embrace that complication because life is complicated, people are complicated. When it's not complicated, I find that I get a little disinterested.
Yeah, yeah. Character drives, right?
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah. Uh, this is a question perhaps to tuck in for later down the road as you're working through editorial with the second book and other things, but I'll be curious to see how you change and shape as a writer as you continue playing with genre and how that then in turn changes mystery for you and some of the work that you've already done.
It will be interesting. I will have to kind of shut off some of the things, some of the, I don't want to say freedoms, but some of the roads I go down in
Mhm.
the other books, I'm going to have to block those, wall those off for the mystery labyrinth to be like those are not your paths, sister. You you stick to this maze. That's a different maze.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how writers do that. Maybe a different shirt, maybe a different soundtrack. I don't know, but I'm sure that you'll handle it and have fun with it as well.
Yeah, it's so weird, but my books tell me where to go. So every book that I write wants to be written in a different place in my house.
Nice.
So my current book likes a particular seat, which is not, it was my daughter used was my daughter's seat. She's at college now, and it only like nothing works if I sit in a different place in the house and I put the computer on. It's like, nope, I go to that chair. Here we go. So I can do coffee shops and that chair. It is very strange. And the book before that, the whole book, I had to be at the kitchen island, which was super uncomfortable.
Love it. Love it. Well, anything that you'd like to say about where people can find out more? You mentioned book tours and other such things. So, where can we find your work and follow along as you're exploring?
Absolutely. Well, I spend most of my social media time on Instagram. I am pretty much just another reader on there. I will post about my books when something's being released, but other times I'm really just telling you what I fell in love with recently and hope you'll read. And I try to support other authors. And um, the thing that makes me the happiest in life is when I recommend a book and a couple weeks later someone DMs me and says, I loved it. I'm happy for the rest of the day. Like you would think it would be book sales or something like that, but that really truly brings me joy. Um, so my book tour is on Instagram. It's also on my website, which is www.elleryadamsbooks.com. And Invasive Species is coming out in hardcover. Sorry, because I know that's a steep price, but it's also coming out on audiobook. And the early listeners have said that the narration is fantastic. There are a lot of voices for this poor woman to do. And what they like the best is that she doesn't high squeak the kid's voice. You know it's a kid
Mhm.
speaking, but it's not like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you
Oh,
listen to an
yes.
audiobook and you're like, oh, the kid is too much. I don't think I can listen to a whole book of this. So, yeah, I'm going all around North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Indiana. I'm going to go to California and I'm going to go to Boston and New York, or Massachusetts and New York. So I hope I can meet you guys at one of those stops. I might be dead
We will.
afterwards, so this is your chance.
Well, wishing you well on the journey. Looking forward to reading the next book in the continuation and looking forward to seeing where you go next.
Thank you so much. I hope we talk again in the future.
Would love that. Would love that. Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime.